Welcome into Bills Postgame Live. Maddy Glab alongside Steve Tasker. We are presented by Wesley, Clark, and Peshkin, your divorce and estate planning attorneys. Your family is our business. And a really tough loss for the Buffalo Bills as their 2022 season comes to an end. 27-10 is your final score against the Bengals. The Bengals came out right off the bat, scored 2 touchdowns, and the Bills just really couldn't keep up. They got within 7-point difference, but it was never close for the Bills. Tough game for the offense, for the defense, who couldn't keep up with what the Bengals were doing on the offensive side of the football and the defensive side of the football. I think it's an even tougher loss because you look at this season and what the Bills had. They faced so much adversity. I think all of us were clinging on to a Super Bowl run because that would make up for all the hardship that this team faced. Unfortunately, that's going to be a close on the season for the Bills, an end to this year's story. Maybe the sequel is going to be better for this team next year.
Well, certainly it's a disappointing, as it always is for 31 other teams other than the one who wins the Super Bowl. It's a disappointing end for the Buffalo Bills, once again out in the divisional round of the playoffs, and actually didn't play as well as they did last year. Yeah. Coming in, scoring 30 points a game over the last month, and just couldn't get out of the rut they were in offensively. Scored 10 points. Kudos to the Cincinnati Bengals. They played extremely well with a ton of backups in on their offensive line. The footing was bad. It was a different kind of weather day. It started to snow early, and it affected the game, but both teams played in the same weather, and the Cincinnati Bengals played far better than the Buffalo Bills did today.
It was the first time the Bills were held to just 10 points the entire season. Ends up being a loss for the Bills. If you're going up against a team like the Bengals, you're going to have to score more than 10 points. All right, Josh Allen is on the podium, so let's send it over to him.
Yeah, obviously you want to win all of them. It's the way it goes sometimes. They had a good game plan. Credit to those guys. They came out. They played hard. We just didn't have it today.
What prevented the offense, you and the offense, from finding the rhythm and the consistent production? What did they do specifically that kind of derailed them?
I mean, I couldn't tell you exactly. Watched the film, and maybe I can answer that a little bit better. We just couldn't find it. I thought we moved the ball when we had some of our possessions, but the 2 early 3-and-outs just stalling throughout the game. You can't win football games that way.
Did you feel like you were under siege all day? There was rarely a time it seemed like you were in the pocket, able to really do much of anything in the pocket.
I mean, they got some good players on that team. So again, credit to those guys.
Josh, can you describe just the last 3.5 or so weeks, the emotions? Obviously a pretty tumultuous time with trying to win football games in Mar and whatnot. As you reflect on it.
Yeah, well, I'm proud of our guys, how we handled situations throughout the year. We could have made a lot of excuses throughout the year of what was going on, but guys continued to fight. We wanted to win this one. We want to win them all. Those guys played better today.
Josh, when you went to the medical time, was that your elbow or what was that?
They buzzed me down from up top.
I know it was early in the game, but falling down 14-0, how much tougher did it become getting into a hole like that so quick?
Yeah, playing from behind is never fun. But we had our opportunity to make it a 1-score game before half, and didn't take advantage of that. Didn't score a touchdown that first drive in the second half. We only got 3. And against teams like this, with a quarterback like that, you're going to have to score 6 and 7. So we didn't do a good enough job of that tonight.
Josh, did it feel like they had a pulse on what you guys were doing offensively those first couple of possessions to start the game off?
Again, they had a good game plan. We were expecting their best punch, and they came out and they punched us.
Did the snow affect what you guys were able to do?
No, not at all.
Steph looked really frustrated. Obviously, y'all are. But what went into just not finding any success within this game?
Again, I'll get a better grasp of that after watching this. Fortunately, it's our last one, so it is what it is at this point.
They grabbed a shot at him. You were on the bench, and he was speaking. He had his arms spread, and then we just saw him leave the locker room early. Can you shed, any light or insight into what he was trying to express to you?
He's a fiery competitor. He wants the ball, and whatever it was that we couldn't get him the ball tonight, we're going to have to learn from.
At some point in time, Josh, were you comfortable with some of the calls that was being played out there?
I'm never going to question a call.
Josh, obviously last year ended in disappointment. What are you feeling right now to not be able to get past the same round again?
Again, disappointment. You play to win. Our goal is to win a Super Bowl, a World Championship, and we didn't accomplish that. So everything that happened this season is kind of null and void in our minds, and it sucks.
Your first year with Ken Dorsey as offensive coordinator, I know it's kind of too early to look back on it all, but if you could reflect on your relationship with him throughout the season and how it developed.
Yeah, again, just the trust aspect of what he's calling, trying to be an extension of him. I think statistically we're eerily similar, or if not better than what we were last year. So again, to come in and to have some of that same groove, you can continue to build on that. And yeah.
Josh.
Thanks, Josh.
Oh, one more.
Obviously, Jamar was with you guys tonight. Was there anything specifically that stood out to you that he told you guys either before the game or at halftime?
No, just his presence is a warm feeling, and obviously we wanted to play for him and continue our mission. And again, we just ran into a team that played better than us tonight. Thank you, guys.
Josh Allen giving kudos there to the Bengals for the game plan that they had to trump the Bills on offense and really on defense as well. We're going to get into our player spotlight. This week's player spotlight is presented by Microsoft Surface. Microsoft Surface is the official tablet and sideline technology of the Buffalo Bills. And Khalil Shakir had 2 catches for 40 yards. So why are we spotlighting him after this one, Steve?
Well, they came in crucial moments, certainly when the Bills were down 14 and they needed to get down close. Shakir came out on a little sail route, a corner route, and Josh hit him, and he got down inside the 5. This led to Josh Allen's quarterback sneak touchdown. And then, of course, on a 1st and 10 in the third quarter when they're down 10, needing some points right out of halftime, he gets open as Josh Allen buys some time and comes across and gets him inside the 30-yard line or to the 30-yard line of the Bengals. Both of those plays were enormous at times when the Bills really needed them. When they were down 14 and then down 10 coming out of halftime, they needed to keep and stay on the field, and Shakir helped them do that.
Yeah, Khalil helped move the ball down the field. It was something that was needed when the Bills finally got into what seemed like a rhythm for a couple different points during that game. This week's game sponsor is Northtown. Whatever you're looking for, you'll find it at Northtown, the official automotive dealer of the Buffalo Bills. Shop online at northtownauto.com. And let's kind of get into this game here and how it unfolded, Steve. The Bengals start right away scoring on their first 2 drives of the game. 14-0 is your score at that point. And then the Bills were able to get on the scoreboard there, scoring a touchdown. 14-7 was as close as the Bills got it the entire game. But when you start with what the Bills tried to do to stop this Bengals offense, where were they lacking? Because the Bengals, we talked about it all week, they were without a couple of their starting offensive line, 3 to be exact. They were without Alex Kappa and Jonah Williams. They had their starting right tackle come out a little bit earlier. But without 3 offensive linemen, you have some backups who aren't used to playing or starting in a playoff game perhaps. But it didn't seem like it was an issue at all for the Bengals. They moved the ball down the field easily against the Bills' defense.
They actually leaned on their run game a lot more than we had seen them coming into this game. They had really struggled to run the football. And with these 5 offensive linemen in there, particularly being motivated, no doubt, by the fact that nobody thought they could play, they came out and fired off the ball. And Zach Taylor gave them a chance to do that, and he kind of fed into what they needed to be successful. They needed to get out, go in and jump out and have a little success in the run game, and then the passing game came after that. And certainly you've got to tip your hat to those guys. They put in a yeoman's effort on a depleted offensive line, came out and played extremely well in the division round of the NFL playoffs. You hardly ever see that. And tonight we saw it from the Cincinnati Bengals. They were very good up front and on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, the Bengals had 172 rushing yards. Joe Mixon had 105 of those rushing yards, averaged 5.3 yards per carry. And when you look at that and you talk about them not having an issue with that offensive line that hadn't been together for most of the season. Most of the season, the Bengals' offensive line was the same five. I think you said for the first 15 weeks of the season, which is pretty unique for offensive linemen who are used to being banged up just because of the type of pressure that they usually face from defensive lines. The pressure that the Bills' defensive line had a tough time generating there. You saw the Bengals get a lot of rushing yards, and it didn't seem like the pressure was there to knock Joe Burrow off of spots where he was comfortable. And now this is a quarterback who is really good under pressure too. So even if you pressure him, he does have a 60% completion percentage and a really high passer rating. So it is very tough to affect a quarterback like Joe Burrow. But what didn't you see from the defensive line that you maybe wanted to see a little bit more of?
Yeah, I was surprised that they couldn't get the kind of penetration and the kind of off-the-edge pressure that the Bengals were able to get against the Bills' offensive line. I was surprised too that one of the things that helped him, DaQuan Jones was not in the game. He's been a real force for the Bills down inside. And, of course, Jordan Phillips is playing with one arm basically for the last part of the season, so they weren't as effective. And that allowed the offensive line to double-team Ed Oliver and hold him at bay. And the edge rushers got up the field, but Joe Burrow is so smooth in the pocket. Stepped away from the pressure, bought himself some time, ran when he needed to. He was just completely surgical in his approach to how they moved the football, what he did in the pocket. And the guys on the outside were giving him options as well. So he never really got caught trying to hold the ball. Had a couple of throwaways, one in the red zone, one on a screen pass where he just threw it in the dirt right away when the Bills were going to get a sack. Just really smart play. It's hard to beat a smart player who executes as good as well as Joe Burrow with the weapons he has outside. And that offensive line did just enough, and actually more than enough in pass protection. And because of their run game, the pass protection was made much easier by a Bills team that didn't know run or pass.
Yeah, it did look like Joe Burrow had enough time in the pocket to do what he needed to do to get on the scoreboard and to get that lead for the Bengals. He gets the ball out at the second fastest rate in the NFL, and it looked like he was doing that with ease against the Bills defense. They couldn't string together those pressure opportunities that they had enough to really throw this offense off. We're going to go to Dion Dawkins, who's on the podium answering some questions.
Ian, how would you evaluate the performance from the offensive line today?
It's like I always mention, right? Like, the further you go on in the season, it's going to get harder. Guys are going to throw punches. We're going to throw punches. It just sucks that the world thinks that every game is supposed to be drastically perfect, but it's far from it. I feel like as a whole, everybody could have did more. The O-line, D-line. Like everybody, it's a group thing. So, not to just like single out us, but we take it personal. And whenever Josh ain't really fluid and doing his thing, we take it personal. And now we have a whole off season to fight that mental battle. So,
Dion, Josh was under pretty consistent pressure from them for most of that game. You talk about execution on the part of your team. But what was Cincinnati doing specifically? Can you kind of take us inside that, maybe to shed some light on how they were generating that?
Yeah, it was just pressure, man. Just a lot of single missiles, man. It's just guys coming from all different angles. Corners coming late. Guys were running games on the inside and outside, just keeping us moving, just keeping us on our toes, and they did a good job. I'm true to it, and they did a good job of keeping our head on the swivel, and that's what the game plan was, obviously, and they executed.
Mitch, offensively, defensively, really across the board. Does it just feel like you guys couldn't get in a rhythm today?
I think when you look at it, when you take a step back and look at it, all three phases, there's ebbs and flows in a game. We all had our time in the sun in regards to not playing complementary football, not putting our defense in an advantageous position or special teams. So you win as a team, you lose as a team. All these cliches are a lot harder when, this is the conclusion of a season, conclusion of a group of guys being together that you really care for. kudos to the Bengals. They played really good football. Can't take that away from them. And in the end, we didn't play well enough, and that's why we're here, and they're going on to the next.
For either of you guys, how disappointing is it, knowing the playoff losses in the past couple of years, to have this game on this day in your place?
I mean, that's it's a serious question. I mean, it sucks. You know, it sucks. I hate to be simple or whatever. It just sucks, bro. Like, we went out there, we want to win. Like, we're here to try to win as many Super Bowls as possible. And as competitors, as a job, and as a love, and as a, you know, a part of like our lives, like, it sucks. And we try to compete at a high level all of the time, and you know, just sometimes it gets us, you know, and that's the sucky part of being human. But you know, like, the good thing is that we got each other, and we win together, and we lose together. And truly, I mean, and I'm gonna speak for Mitch too, and the other guys, like, I would do it all over again with the same group of guys. Like, we have the best team, the best coaches, the best cafeteria people, the best garbage guys, everything. Everything is just here, man. And then, you know, like, we just fell short. Today.
Mitch, did it kind of seem like in those first two possessions that Cincinnati had a pulse on what you guys were doing?
I would say we also understood, for the most part, what their game plan was going to be. You know, there's always wrinkles in that. There's always different caveats that they put on certain things. I think it was all about execution. They came out and they executed at a higher level than we did. You know, we kind of dipped our toe in the water and they jumped in the pool. So when you give a team like that was it 14-0 lead, or, you know, whatever it was, that's an uphill battle from the jump. You know, we dug ourselves in a hole early, and we understood that it was going to be a grinder after that. And yeah, I think, to echo what Dion said, every team says it's such a special group, and we've gone through so much, but there's just a different pulse in this building, a different pulse in this locker room, a different connection to the people in the building and outside of the building, not only for what we've gone through, but just, you know, Buffalo is such a special place. And to kind of answer your question earlier about does it suck losing at home in the playoffs, I mean, it sucks losing in general. It sucks in the playoffs because our ultimate goal is to go all the way. That's what we signed up for. We didn't sign up for just kind of collecting checks, going out there and seeing what happens. We want to execute not only for the organization, the people, but for each other. I think when the offensive line breaks when we receive the ball or whenever it's time to go out, we always huddle up, and it's always the same thing, which is like, let's just one play at a time do it for each other. And that's what this year's been all about. And that's the toughest thing, is that, you know, every year there's turnover. Nothing is guaranteed in this business, personnel-wise or whatnot. That group of guys went out there together for the last time, and that's the toughest part of this, because, like he echoed, we had we only speak for certain guys, but the O-line in particular felt I had a really good connection, and it's a real shame that we're not going to be able to go out there together again.
If either one of you or both of you could answer, obviously DeMar was able to be in the locker room with you guys for the first time. Was there anything that kind of stood out to you that he said either before the game or at halftime?
I don't know if sorry to answer this, but just his presence, I think, speaks volumes. He's not a big rah-rah guy, and I'm sure that at some point he's a little bit exhausted of people asking how he's doing, or put in a position that he didn't ask to be put in. His presence alone, his smile, his positive energy, which he's always had, always interjects energy and good vibes with the group. It was really good to see him. I'm really happy for the fans, the crowd, for him to be able to go out there, and he's worked very hard to get in the position he's at right now. So hopefully that answers your question.
Dion, guys like Tremaine Edmonds, Devin Singletary, Jordan Poyer, this potentially could be their last time in the locker room with you guys. So just, what are your thoughts about, that business side of it, being with those guys since you walked in the door?
The thoughts on it is really more so, right? Like, those guys played their ass off all season long. We all know that no team will be the same, and I'm pretty sure that our management will try their best to keep it the same. I'm a Tremaine Edmonds fan, a Motor fan, and a Poyer fan. So I'm pulling for them. Whatever is meant to come, and it'll come with all of its flowers, because those guys left it all on the field all season long. Played hurt, played injured, mental game, every part of it. And I could say that for so many other guys in that locker room too. And whatever's meant to come, it will come, and they'll be smiling. And if it's here, if it's there, no matter where it is, I'm gonna smile at them, and I'm just, y'all did that, But
Well said.
Mitch, you talk about this being a special group. Typically in life, when you go through struggle, you just want it to come to an end. But in sports, the more struggle you go through, kind of the more you want to see it through to the end. Can you talk about that dynamic and how, as the struggles continue to build throughout the year, how you guys just continue to get closer, and now it's all over?
That's an interesting question. I would say that in life, even your struggles, you want to end, you want them to end, but you also want to learn. You want to give them their time, their what they're due. I would say the same thing in sport. Not only is everyone going through these markers as a team, whether it's the DeMar situation, the Buffalo Blizzards, Dawson Knox, or Vaughn going down, all this stuff. But each person also has their own script throughout the season that they're going through that maybe people don't know about. We see each other more than our families in season. A lot of the time, we have to confide in one another, lean on each other, which is not natural for grown men to do at times. But I feel like barriers are broken with this group in regards to being vulnerable to a certain extent. It also depends on the individual. Regardless of struggles or not, we want to see this through the end. It definitely stings a little bit more knowing that this particular group went through so much, and this chapter's closed. So that's the nature of the beast, and it's the poops, to be honest.
Thanks,
Appreciate you.
Dion Dawkins saying everybody could have done more in this one, not just the offensive line. And if you look at the offense and the way the offense really struggled to get the ball anywhere near the red zone or just move the ball down the field and try to string something together to get into a rhythm there, it seemed really tough for Josh Allen and the offensive line today. And even some of the receivers. I mean, your leading receiver in this one is Dawson Knox for 65 yards, and then Khalil Shakir, 2 catches for 40 yards. Stephon Diggs had 4 catches for 35 yards. And when you look at what the Bengals defensive line did and their front 7 did with the way that they were able to pressure Josh Allen and the offensive line, when this defensive line pressures, the numbers that they post for opposing quarterbacks are crazy. They've forced 7 interceptions heading into this game when they get pressure, and they allow a 39% completion percentage when they get pressure. And that's what it looked like today for Josh Allen and the offense. So what were the Bengals doing on defense that just made it so tough for the Bills to get anything done on offense?
Yeah, they were really slippery up inside. I think the defensive front was really strong for them. The offensive line, I think, struggled at times, no question about it. They had a couple of holding calls that would have brought back other plays that were, we didn't hit. I thought the offensive line struggled a little bit against the Bengals' defensive line. And the defensive line of the Bengals is Hendrickson is there, and they've got some guys, but down inside they're very tough. They're very slippery on their defensive tackle position, and their ends are really high motor guys. Maybe that was the difference today, but I still think too that when Josh dropped back at times, he was looking, and the Bills did not have a quick release pass game. Josh was holding the ball or patting the ball, looking for options instead of throwing the ball right away like the Bengals game plan was done. I thought the Bills forced Josh to wait too long for pass plays to develop in the secondary. And maybe it was a credit to the Bengals secondary as well, taking those options away, forcing Josh to hold the ball. If that's the case, good on them. But the offense underperformed today. They only scored 10 points. Certainly the conditions you can point to, but the Bengals scored exactly on their average for the season. They averaged 26 and change for the season. They scored 27 points. It's exactly what they probably should have expected to get. The Bills were well below their average. And you've got to put that on some. Some of it certainly was the defensive effort of the Bengals. Others I'm pretty sure the Bills guys in that locker room were looking at themselves.
Yeah, I think everybody needs to look at themselves after this game. It was not just one person. It was an entire team effort. And the Bengals, like Josh Allen said, kudos to the way that they schemed, because they got the Bills in just about every single area, every single facet of this game. The closest that the Bills came was 14-7 early on in the game. It didn't get any closer than that. And I think the tone setter was the Bengals really coming out in the first two drives and moving the ball down the field with so much ease to find the end zone. And with the offense and their lack of ability to do what the Bengals were doing, the run game didn't really get going as well. Josh Allen only had 26 rushing yards. The Bills are 18-2 when Josh Allen has 10 or more carries. He only had 8 carries in this one. That wasn't going to be the answer for the Bills in this one, just because of what the offense couldn't do. But Devin Singletary, 6 attempts for 24 rushing yards. James Cook, 5 attempts for 13 rushing yards. They had a tough time running the ball too. So when it was tough to find your receivers, when it was tough to get the ball out, when Josh Allen was hanging onto the ball too long, the run game also struggled to get going too. And that's, you hope to lean on something else if one part of your game isn't working. And they couldn't lean on anything else.
Yeah, if you notice what happened in the Cincinnati running game, they ran up inside the tackles. Joe Burrow just handed it off, and Nick Mixon or P. Ryan would just run straight ahead, and they would just kind of power their way through. And there were some gaps there at times with some pulls and traps, some pin and pulls, and some of the power run game was there, and they had some nice creases, no question. But a lot of it, once they got to the line of scrimmage, they were going full speed. The Bills, if you remember, particularly early in the game, were trying to get to the edge. When you run to the edge of the field and try and plant to go up the field, the footing wasn't there to be had, and going laterally was not going to work for anybody today. It was all straight at north and south if you could manage it and in your game plan or your play calls. And the Bills adjusted to that all too slowly, I think. And the Bengals were on it and decided that's what they were going to do. Their offensive line, like I said earlier, the coaching staff of the Bengals really allowed their young and inexperienced offensive line, their backup offensive line, just to fire off and do the best they could. And they got enough. They were successful enough early going to keep that as a part of the game. And certainly when they scored on their first 2 drives, go up 14-0, they could do whatever they wanted and had the margin of error then to, even if they weren't successful, to still be okay. But they never really kind of took their foot off the gas. They were successful throughout the game, running and passing, and I think the key was that they just went forward instead of trying to go misdirection or anything like that to the edges of the defense.
Yeah, and the Bengals started off the game on offense. This is a team you expect to throw the football, and they mixed in the run and the pass on that first drive of the game. It was a pass on the first play, and then Joe Mixon took it for 5 yards. So I think from the get-go, the Bengals did a good job of mixing the pass with the run, and you always hear, the run helps open the passing game and vice versa. And the Bills weren't able to find that on offense for themselves. And kudos to the Bengals and Zach Taylor and what they were able to do. Zach Taylor is now 5-1 in the playoffs. Sean McDermott, on the other hand, 4-5 in the playoffs, 4-1 at home. The Bills were 4-0 heading into this one, but they get their first loss in the playoffs under Sean McDermott. We've got some more sound in the locker room, so let's send it to Greg Rousseau.
I mean, it's tough, because we work so hard day in and day out. I know the guys in my room, I wouldn't trade them for anything in the world. Like, the love we got for each other, the work we put in, how dedicated we are, it sucks when you don't get the result you want.
How about their start? I mean, they got off to a great start. Did that put you guys on your heels a little bit in the game?
I mean, yeah, they started hot. We weren't able to, really force any field goals in the red zone, so obviously, kind of snowballed from there. I mean, we tightened up as the game went on. but it wasn't enough.
This game was so out of the ordinary for the way you guys played. You know.
All right, Greg Rousseau, they're saying they were able to tighten it up a little bit, and the Bengals score 14 points in the first quarter, then 3 in the second quarter, 7 in the third quarter, and 3 in the fourth quarter. So holding them to 3 points in the fourth quarter at that point, it was going to be tough for the Bills to even hang on in the fourth quarter if they got things going. But the adjustments, did you see any adjustments that were made on the defensive side of the ball that helped a little bit?
Yeah, certainly they tightened up in the second half, giving up 10 points instead of the 17 they gave up in the first half. So they did tighten up, no question about it. But I also think that Cincinnati decided as well that they were going to shorten the game and lean on their running game a little bit. They knew that the Bills were struggling offensively. They felt confident that they could keep the Bills out of the end zone. And the 2 drives that the Bills scored on were long drives, 8-minute drives, 7-minute drives. That's a long time, and you just run out of possessions. And I think the Bengals knew that, knowing that they could keep the Bills in front of them and force the Bills to go the long way, both on the clock and the scoreboard, that the game was just going to be too short for them to come back in. So some of that helped them in the second half. But this game was all, unfortunately for Bills fans, this game was all about Cincinnati and their ability to get things done with a depleted offensive line and a run game that was, I don't want to say non-existent for most of the season, but certainly not a factor in their offense to come out and hang 150-plus yards on the Bills. Says a lot about the motivation they came in with. And whether that was manufactured or not by the fact that the ticket sales were going on for the game in Atlanta, all of that. In fact, Zach Taylor referred to that in his post-game comments as well. So they used that as fuel, and it drove them to victory, and kudos to Zach Taylor for getting that done.
You know what, Bengals, you were also selling tickets for the next game last week, so I don't really understand that at all. That's just what you have to do in the NFL with games ahead. Another thing, though, when you look at the red zone efficiency, and this is something that you talked about heading into this game, the Bengals, when they got inside the red zone, they were 2 of 4 in terms of scoring touchdowns, 50%, pretty good number. The Bills were 1 of 3, just 33%. This is something the Bills struggled with early on in the season, was red zone efficiency, and they really improved that stat as the season went on. They were able to bump up to 9th in the NFL after ranking near the bottom of the NFL for the first half of the season, really. And then third down percentage, converting third downs. The Bills were also at 33% in terms of converting third downs, 4 for 12. The Bengals were 6 of 10, 60%. So those are 2 important stats when it comes to being able to get into field position or in a position to score the football.
You want how bad it looked, and it felt like a bad game. Like you could just feel the futility of fighting against this Bengals team today. They were on fire. They had 30 total first downs in this game, but as you just mentioned, they only had 10 third downs. So they were really moving the football at a high clip, and there was at one point where they were averaging 9.1 yards per play in the first half after a couple of drives. It was a rough start for the Bills, and they really never recovered.
Yeah, I think the Bills were somewhere under 3 yards per play after that first quarter. There was a big difference after that first quarter with what the Bengals were able to do and what the Bills struggled to do. All right, we've got some more locker room sound here. Khalil Shakir is up next.
In a way, we beat ourselves. Obviously, their hats off to them. They're a really, really good football team. But we know we can do a lot better. And that's definitely, as the game went on, we just kept telling that message to each other that we got this. And at the end of the day, they played a great game.
I know it was your first year there, but when you put it into context what the expectations were coming into this year, how do you kind of summarize, what happened?
To my first year personally, I had a good first year. I learned a lot from a lot of people on this team. I could probably say I learned one thing from every single person on this team. So it's been an amazing year. Definitely learned a lot from the receiver room guys and getting to know them and them welcoming me in and just teaching me the game. It's been awesome. It's been a blessing.
Would you have thought anybody could hold? You guys held to 1 touchdown, 10 points, biggest game of the year. From what you've seen of your team and the way you guys have performed all year.
And like I said, we wanted to do a lot better. We know we can play a lot better than that. And at the end of the day, they played a great game.
How much of it they got off to a great start, and you guys were on your heels right away, both offensively and defensively. How much did that impact the way you guys played today?
Like I said, hats off to them. They're an amazing team. They're a great team.
All right, we heard Mitch talk about it and Greg talk about it. You know, this team is special. They're a different group than they've had before. They're very close because of what they went through this season, because of the games that were moved, because of the weather, because of Damar Hamlin, because of the passing of Dawson Knox's brother early on in the season, the shooting that happened at the Tops Market. The city faced a lot of things this season, and the team also experienced some of that pain that went along with that. And through those things, you saw a team get closer and closer. A team that was already close get even closer, which you didn't think was possible. And when you look at each other in the locker room after a game like this, I think it's even tougher, because this is the type of team that you're cheering for to go all the way, that you want them to make it to the Super Bowl. It seemed like the writing was on the walls there for a moment. After everything the team had been through, it would just make sense that the light would be there at the end of the tunnel after all that they went through. Unfortunately, that's not the case this year, but it's got to sting a little bit more because of that.
Yeah, and in the weeks to come, we're all going to go back and look at what happened during the season, when certain things began to happen, when certain things stopped happening for the Bills offense, for the Bills defense, when players got injured, how that changed the roster, when players were advanced into the starting lineup, how that changed the offensive play calling, and then overall a complete huge snapshot of how Ken Dorsey did in his first year as a play caller, how Leslie Frazier finished out the year and did his job. All of these things will start to take shape, and we'll be able to get a bird's eye view of how it all transpired. But I'll say this. You could feel a big reset 3 weeks ago in the Monday night game in Cincinnati, how things were put into stark perspective about, how important it is, how important life is, and how important these players are, and the risks that are involved. Don't know if we'll ever know for sure if that had an overriding effect on the players in the 2 games since then, or 3 games since then. But certainly, this team did have a bump in the road during the regular season that nobody could deny, and it had great ripple effects. Don't know how long where that will fit into the history of this season. Certainly, it will always be an asterisk as you discuss what happened in this season. But you're right, Maddy. There's a lot of things that are going to go into the way we dissect and slice and dice what happened in this year. It started out on fire, right where they left off last year. And then it seemed to cool off. And despite the fact that the team scored 30 points in the 4 games leading up to this one, you never really felt like they were themselves. It'll be interesting to see if we can come up with answers as to why that might have been.
I also think it's really interesting, and I totally understand they're 2 different teams, but it's interesting watching this team go into the postseason, or going into the off season, versus last year's team. Last year's team, you end in a heartbreaking loss to the Kansas City Chiefs in a game that people are calling the best game in NFL history, one of the best games in NFL history, because of the way that the 2 teams just went back to back to back, scoring drives to push a game into overtime, the 13 seconds at the end of that game. And you go into that offseason, yes, with heartbreak, but with a lot of hope for what's to come. This offseason, this game, you go into the offseason after a game where both sides of the ball really struggled, and you're not happy with the performance that the Bills had in any way, because it never looked good for them. Even in the start of the game when they were able to score that first touchdown, it just didn't ever look like it was going to be their game because of the way that they struggled on both sides of the football. And you go into the offseason still with hope, because this team is a very, very good football team, and they have Josh Allen, and they have a great coach, and they have some great players on both sides of the football. But with a couple more question marks as to what this team is going to look like in free agency, what this team is going to look like in the draft, maybe some more question marks of areas that, hey, maybe there are some holes here in this position group that we need to help out with.
There's 20% of the roster that is in the last year or 1-year deal of their contract, and there's some huge contributors in there as well. It's going to be interesting to see, because we went through this last year, at the end of last year, where we knew that the roster was going to change a little bit, and they bolstered it. It looked like it got better, and there was high hopes for it, and certainly that proved to be true of the 13-3 record. They were the 1 seed all the way up until the Monday night game that got canceled. They were clicking. They got to do it again. It's a long road, and now, on a day like today where you just get put out of the playoffs in the divisional round, you realize once again that tomorrow you're going to be 0-0, and you got to do it all over again.
Yeah, definitely. I think another big difference between the two seasons was the Bills went into last year's offseason playing their best football, right?
Right.
This season, it doesn't feel like the last few games was truly the Bills' best football. All right, Sean McDermott is on the podium, so let's send it over to Coach.
Okay, we'll go ahead and open up to your questions.
Sean, Matt Milano today in the locker room said he felt like the team lacked energy. Given what was at stake, how do you think something like that is allowed to happen?
Yeah, I just think overall, when you get into a rhythm, they got into a rhythm pretty quickly offensively, and we had a hard time getting them out of that rhythm. And then when you're on the field, and then offensively, when you're not on the field and extending drives, it can affect the energy a little bit. But I thought the guys came out with the proper amount of energy. But when they're in a rhythm offensively and you can't get off the field, that can tend to zap your energy a little bit. I thought the guys' effort was there. We didn't do enough to win.
John, how would you evaluate the line of scrimmage overall today?
Yeah, when you've heard me talk about this before. If you want to win games on a consistent basis, that's where the game starts. It's there, and it's at the quarterback position, and we didn't do enough. I would say overall at the line of scrimmage tonight. Give the Bengals credit, but you probably saw what I saw.
Hey, Sean, these players embrace the expectations coming into the season throughout the season, and with this kind of result, what was sort of your message to them?
Keep their head up. This is a tough league, and it's a tough business that way, and you learn from things like this. I'm proud of them, even though this hurts. Proud of them in the way they handled themselves with class this year, and the ups and downs and the adversity that they faced. And I think they'll take that with them. But for right now, this stings, and I wish it was a different result.
Coach, there seemed to be like some unsure footing due to the conditions. Did your players on defense in particular feel they had to play more conservative at times because of the unsure nature of
no excuses, Chris. They beat us, and give credit to them. They beat us, and they out-physicaled us.
Coach, Cincinnati has some good balance out there in the passing game and the run game. Do you feel that they had a feel for what you guys do defensively?
No. Well, listen. We had a feel for them. It wasn't a surprise in terms of after that first really drive and a half. I thought we adjusted, knew what they were doing, without getting into the details on it for you here. But we had a hard time stopping it at the same time. And the challenge with that offense is you commit to stopping the run, and then they've got three really good receivers that one-on-one are tough matchups for you. So I thought we came in with a good game plan, and we adjusted through it. And at the end of the day, it wasn't enough.
Coach, are you any concerns that the Super Bowl window might be closing after a season?
No. This is a good football team, and you learn from things like this. You keep knocking on the door. That's what you do. You stay steadfast in your focus and your approach. You work your tail off. Again, that's a good football team. We just played, and they played better than we did tonight. They coached better than we did tonight, and we've got to learn from this and make the proper adjustments as we move forward. And for staying in the moment tonight, I don't want to get into the evaluations and all that type of stuff, but obviously disappointed in the result.
Sean, that Stefan is a very emotional guy. He was visibly frustrated on the sidelines, was very quick to leave tonight. Where do you think stay with him right now?
Well, he's a member of the Buffalo Bills. He's a competitive guy, and that's what makes him good is what you saw. Is he's very competitive, like we all are. We work extremely hard at these jobs to be the best we can possibly be, and it hurts. And I wouldn't want a guy that it doesn't hurt, right? So he put it all on the line out there. We put it all on the line, and tonight it wasn't good enough. And that's the part that stings.
So when he came downstairs, he was like halfway out the tunnel, and I saw someone kind of bring him back in. And then I was told he left a short time later. Did you talk to him at all? Was there some issue after the game?
He was in there when I addressed the team, and that's what matters most.
Hey, Sean, what do you sense this means with Josh Allen? Just kind of how he handles this, what he has to do to kind of rebound this? Because I know he wanted to have a better day.
Yeah, we all did. And you know, Josh, I thought did some good things, and like we all want some plays back as well. So, you know, sometimes we try to do too much overall, and you know, but it's you know, we all have to grow from this, and you know, right now, just being in the moment, this is it stings, like I said, and Josh is a heck of a competitor, as you guys know. But I'll take him any day of the week, man, on our football team, and I love how competitive he is, and you know, these are things you've got to learn from. We have to make the adjustments, the proper adjustments we need to make so we can move this organization and continue to move it forward, because that's the direction we're heading.
Sean, all year, if you didn't win, you still found a way to make it tight. Every loss was close. Today, that didn't seem to be the case. Does it matter at all? I mean, a loss in the last game, we know what it means, but does it matter that you went out this way where it wasn't typical of the way you guys played?
Yeah, the short answer is no, it doesn't matter. A loss is a loss, and your season ends. The longer answer, and it'll be a discussion for another day, is what happened and what we have to do to get it changed. And that's part of the adjustments that I mentioned earlier, is we've got to be able to adjust from that as a coaching staff and beyond, right? So that's what we have to do if we want to continue to knock at this door and move beyond where we were this year.
I know it's probably too soon to give a detailed response, but just your impressions of the growth of the relationship between Josh Allen and Ken Dorsey this year, first-time play caller with Josh. How did that relationship develop throughout the year, and do you think it was a productive growth process?
Well, I mean, we had two new play callers, both Ken and Matt Smiley, our special teams coordinators. So I thought, you know, anytime you go through your first year, you're gonna learn a lot. You're gonna learn from the highs, you're gonna learn from the lows, and it's what you do with that education as you move forward that really defines who you are as a coach and who we then become as an offense in this case, or a special teams unit with Coach Smiley. So, you know, both of those two guys are you know, hard workers, and I know it's important to them. And I thought in a lot of ways they did a really good job, and I'm sure they'll look back and find some ways that they want to improve as well. So.
You have another number of key players that could not be with you next year. How do you navigate those conversations in the locker room over the next few days, just knowing that some of those significant players might not be around in the future?
Yeah, well, that's the hard part of this business. You know, I love every person in that locker room for what they went through this year and how much time they put into it. I know how important it was to everyone, and it's been I know we came up short tonight, but a total team effort, and that doesn't happen. You don't get this far without that being the case. You know, that being said, that's a conversation for another day, and you know, we'll see where it goes.
Sean, the season's so unprecedented in so many ways, especially concentrated towards the end of the season. So I don't know if you have a guess, I guess, to answer this question, but how do you sense the decompression is going to be for this team, given all the expectations and the hopes and then all of the emotions that have happened here in the last 4 or 5 weeks?
Well, I mean, like I said before, you work your tail off all season long. You work in the off season every day as hard as you can to be the best that you can. And there's only one team, and we wanted it to be our team, and that's what hurts the most. And when you don't perform up to your expectations internally, that hurts. And you know, but as a competitor, you're only really left with one choice, and that is to pull yourself together in due time and find a way to get it done. And that's what we're steadfast, and that'll be the vision as we move forward here. So the goal hasn't changed and won't change for this organization, and we got to continue to do everything we can to get there, and that's the goal.
Might it be easier with the context of all the things that happened to find a little more satisfaction quicker in this off season than in quote-unquote normal seasons, of the things that you're proud of and all the things that you did accomplish?
I'm most proud of the fact that the guys, the players, as young men, will take the lessons that they learned from this season and the adversity that they faced. I think they'll take that with them through their lives as men, and I think that's what I think that's a byproduct of the season. The goal, though, is still to make it to and win the Super Bowl. So just kind of staying in buckets here. That's what stings the most. And but the sport does teach you lessons as a person, and I think they'll take that with them for sure.
Sean, I suppose this relates to Tim's question, but DeMar's presence here was an important part of the story. I know he interacted with your team in the locker room. What did that mean? What was said? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, just generally speaking, out of respect for the environment in there, you know, DeMar was in the locker room pregame, and you know, his just him being in the locker room, his presence, I think was good for the guys, and also hopefully good for him. And I thought it was a pretty cool moment. The game wasn't trending the way we wanted it to, but when they put him on the big screen, and just a great moment, keeping perspective, of course, on where he was just a few weeks ago. So super happy for him, and thankful that his health is returning, and I know he'll continue to take it one day at a time.
Hey Sean, early on in the fourth quarter, you were deep in your own zone. You decided to punt on fourth down. What went into that decision?
Yeah, just we had, without getting into strategy, had something dialed up there. They didn't give us the look that we wanted, and got called off. So on the fourth down situation, so we were going to look to be, I guess, moderately aggressive right there, but didn't also want to end the game right then and there either. Down 14, felt like still wanted to give us a chance. You know, I thought we could give ourselves a chance if it didn't get called and didn't get executed, but had something dialed up there, and just didn't get the look we were looking for, and then you know, we just offensively weren't on the field long enough, getting into a rhythm. They affected the quarterback, and we didn't affect their quarterback. And I think when you look at it in simple terms, that's what the game boils down to most of the time is when you can affect the opponent's quarterback, and they can affect your quarterback. And you know, I think that's what was going on a lot tonight.
You mentioned not affecting the quarterback enough. Do you feel like you just didn't get enough, especially maybe from some of those young defensive linemen that you guys have been developing the last couple of years?
Yeah, I'm not going to point it to just one deal. You know, you can start with me if you want to look anywhere. Just start with me. But overall, you got to be able to get pressure and affect the quarterback with 4. And I didn't think we did enough tonight overall, and give them credit. And they did some good things, and then flip it over to their side. They were affecting the quarterback at times with 4. But again, that's something we're going to need to look at as we move forward here.
Sean, outside of a handful of plays a couple of weeks ago, this is the first time you've gotten a chance to go against Joe Burrow on the field. I know you've watched tape of him, I'm sure. But what did you see from him, and how good is he?
He's a good quarterback. Again, to your point, you know, first real exposure to him over a true game here, and he's smart. And he got the ball out of his hands at time, and dumped the ball down to the back out of the backfield, and checked the ball down, and kept them on schedule. I thought that was good. And there was times where he held it and got the ball down the field. So they do a good job. He's extremely smart. Does a good job staying on schedule, and you know, they've got some pretty good weapons around him with those 3 guys in the back out of the backfield. And so again, give them credit, and you know, we'll again have to continue to work on our side of things.
Sean, I know you don't like to make excuses all that often, but is there anything to just the cumulative effect of exhaustion of all the things you've gone through, getting to this moment and being somewhat drained?
Yeah, no, this is what we work for. I told you guys that. I mentioned it the last couple of weeks. I appreciate where you're coming from, that Joe, but this is what you work so hard for all season, to get into the playoffs and to make a push and get to the Super Bowl and win it. So there's no second place trophies. You do learn valuable lessons from this experience, and you put your head down and go back to work. All right, thanks, guys.
All right, that was Sean McDermott. He says the Super Bowl window is definitely not closed for this team. We're going to learn from this experience and keep knocking at that door. So when we look back on the season, we look ahead, let's end the show on a positive. What is something positive that came out of this season or came out of the last couple of games here?
I think still, even when this team was not hitting on all cylinders, they were scoring 30 points a game. You've still got an all-pro inside linebacker in Matt Milano, and Tremaine Edmonds has proven his worth over the course of this season to be one of the guys you can build off of. Tre'Davious White being healthy again and starting to play. Certainly, he took a couple of penalties today, but he's going to be back in his all-pro form. I think Kaiir Elam began to get to the point where he felt mentally at peace where he could come out and compete as a corner in the NFL without thinking about what his assignments were, without thinking about his techniques. He could just free up and play, and his play really elevated. I think on offense, Josh Allen is still the atomic weapon in the National Football League, no question about it. And I don't think there's any question Diggs is still one of the top receivers in the league. And I liked Dawson Knox in the season he put together as well, particularly in the second half. So there's a lot of guys on this team that you can build around, a lot of things you got to be happy about. And I think Brandon Beane is going to know that. I think the things that Sean has said in his post-game, when you kind of tear them apart, you can't get beat at the line of scrimmage on either side of the ball. And I would agree with that. In the years past, in 2018 when Josh was a rookie, he didn't have an offensive line and they struggled. And even in 2018 when they couldn't get it together and they struggled, that's when their offensive line went through some problems. And then in 2020 where they got an offensive line, they had the guys they wanted and they stayed healthy, they were a juggernaut. So this team has learned some lessons over the course of their building process to this point, and they're going to go back to work and build it better for another year, no question about it. They've got a lot of solid pieces and a lot of guys that they're looking forward to coming back. James Cook, Khalil Shakir, some guys that have a bright future. Now they're veterans in the National Football League, and I mean, you've got those guys coming back even more motivated to be a part of something to try and fix the shortcomings that they ran into today. So a lot of really good players on this football team. And you've still got Josh, who's playing at a really high level, and you've found some things out about yourself that you can build off of and fix.
Yeah, I think games like this, games in the playoffs, tough games against tough opponents reveal things about a team, and I think it's revealed whatever it has revealed to Sean McDermott and to Brandon Beane. Sean said we're going to make those adjustments and we're going to improve as a team. So I think one nice thing is that you're going to come away with maybe some things that you didn't know heading into this season that you now know about this football team, that you can make adjustments to and you can make changes to going forward into next season. It sucks that this team was as injured as they were throughout the entire season, but it's nice to know going forward, hopefully that health is going to be on this team's side. You're going to have Von Miller coming back. You're going to have Micah Hyde coming back. And it's been really nice to see some of the rookies come on strong toward the end of the season. Kyer Elam with an interception in last week's game against the Dolphins, and Khalil Shakir with 2 big catches in today's game. James Cook also doing a lot of things for this team down the stretch. So I think you leave this season with some positives that you can hang on to as the Bills head into the offseason. They still have a freak in Josh Allen. He's a hell of a quarterback, and he's going to continue to be that way. So that's going to do it for us here from Bills Postgame Live. We hope you guys enjoy the offseason. We're going to be covering the entire offseason, so don't worry. We are not going anywhere. One Bills Live tomorrow, 12 to 3. Coming up, you've got the Combine. That's just... It seems like it's just a few weeks away. That's going to be in the beginning of March, then on to free agency, and the NFL draft will be here before we know it. Thanks for hanging on with us for the 2022 season. We appreciate all your support. We'll see you guys next week.